Welcome to the Early Learning Summit, hosted by Capital Region ESD 113 and moderated by Carrie Blankenship. This is Session 2, the Early Learning Community.
We are on day 2 of our Early Learning Summit. We're going to look at our early learning community. And so when we think about the landscape of our early learning, there are a lot of neighborhoods in our space. And we share common space and we function independently to serve a common purpose. And so our goal today is to recognize some of our neighbors, clarify our work, and identify ways that we can work together to form a stronger neighborhood to better serve our kids. And so with that, I am happy to turn over our presentation today to some of our friends from DCYF and OSPI, who are going to share with you about our neighborhood. I need to stop and switch presentations, so bear with me one moment. Got to click the right button. If you haven't had a chance yet, please do find that attendance link in the chat box and sign in. I'm doing the screen shuffle over here on my side. And my mouse is not working. It partially turned off. There we go. All right. Now I have lost my I apologize. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty at the moment. It keeps thinking that I want it to do something I don't want it to do. So this is what I'm going to do. All right, can you see that? Are we ready to go? All right, thank you. All right, without further ado, Ms. Ryan Guzman, will you please take it away?
I will do a quick introduction of our team, and then I'm going to hand it off to my partner, Alicia, and she's going to walk us through the beginning slides. But welcome, everyone who's coming today. Thank you for having us. I'm excited to be here and to be a part of this conversation. I love the reference to neighborhoods. I immediately go to Mr. Rogers, and yeah, it's a wonderful neighborhood. My position is the Early Childhood Special Education Coordinator at OSPI, and I'm going to tag in my partner, Julie, really quickly to say hello.
Thank you, Ryan. It's an honor to be here today. Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Dean. I work with Ryan at OSPI, and I am the Early Childhood Special Education Inclusion Specialist. I'm going to tag in my Inclusion Specialist partner, Allison Beeson.
Hey everyone, thanks for having us. Like Julie said, my name is Allison Beeson and I am the Inclusion Specialist for DCYF ECAP, and I am going to tag in Alicia.
Hello everybody, thanks for having us here today. I am Alicia Brender, I work at DCYF and I am the Integrated Pre-K Program Administrator.
All right, and let's bring, I assume Nicole is with us as well. So Nicole, glad you could make it, and let's say hello.
I almost said good morning. Oh, wow. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Nicole Lohr. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm from DCYF ECAP as well. And my title is ECAP Readiness, Innovation, and Capacity Manager, which just means I get to work with a bunch of amazing people around ECAP quality efforts and training and technical assistance. So happy to be here and share this time with you.
Awesome. I think we're ready for the next slide, Carrie.
Great. Thank you. I'm just going to spend a couple of moments doing a land acknowledgement. So I would just like to acknowledge that our meeting today is taking place on the native lands of many Indigenous people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. I am attending from the lands of the Coast Salish and Duwamish tribes, native people of the south coast of the Puget Sound. Tribes were forced to cede most of their homelands to the United States. They retain their inherent rights to fish, hunt, and gather in their traditional and accustomed areas, among other rights afforded to sovereign nations. We acknowledge the history of this land and the sovereignty of its original inhabitants, as well as the truth of oppression and violence imposed on Indigenous people by the federal government, particularly those through a history of forced removal of tribal children from their homes to mission and boarding schools, where many were subject to physical, sexual, and mental abuse and were forced to desist participation in any tribal traditions. We acknowledge that this truth in hopes that we can be building a mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. Acknowledgement by itself is a very small gesture. It becomes meaningful when you feel that when it's coupled with authentic relationships and informed action. We encourage you to learn more about the tribes in your area and to help programs that you support do the same. One way to do so is to visit websites to learn more about and find out about upcoming events. Another way could be to explore the since time immemorial early learning curriculum, which can be found on the DCYF website under Tribal Relations, or the K-12 STI curriculum on the Office of Superintendent Public Instruction's website under the Office of Native Education. Thank you. Next slide.
All right, so just a quick reminder, well, for us and for you, really about what we'll be able to cover today. So we were approached by Carrie to talk about, again, the neighborhood. What does it look like when our partnerships can come together and truly support all children? Julie and I are here to speak to our special education population, our students with disabilities that are engaging in regular early childhood programs. What is their current accessibility and what does that look like? So we're going to spend time in that space. We also want to highlight what are some of the major programs. I would say that these are 3 programs that we're looking at. That's not all of them. If you're like, wait, I don't fit into that space, that's okay. It's not everybody. But those are I would say the partnerships that we have and that we're elevating right now. What else? But we want to offer some time for you to become more familiar with and to learn about the requirements of Part B programs. And we have an initiative that was presented to us from Governor Inslee last January 2020 around looking at integrated early childhood programs. What does it look like? And recognizing that our current systems are not supporting all children. By acknowledging this, we can move past it. And this is a conversation that we hope to bring to you and to challenge you to look at your systems and to consider what are we doing well, and then what do we need to move past so that we can truly support all children across Washington State. So that is, I would say, that the heaviest list of our conversation today, and I'm super excited to move forward on that. So next slide. Alicia, you are muted.
Of course I am. DCYF and OSPI play key roles in advancing racial equity in the early learning system and eliminating disparities in child outcomes. So over the next 2 slides, I'll spend a little time talking about DCYF and the guiding principles related to our work, and then she'll spend a little bit of time on the OSPI side as well. And you know, the first one is really having responsive and adaptive systems, making sure that programs and service delivery are culturally and linguistically responsive, and that services are contoured to the needs of the child in the context of that child's family and in their community or their neighborhood. That are principle around racially equitable, that all children have equitable opportunities and resources to develop them to their full potential. We interrupt policies and practices that maintain that structural racism and those inequalities that cause discrimination and bias within our early childhood systems. We bring a strength focused in cultivating our leadership, nurturing and respecting the dignity by valuing every individual's leadership, strength, and assets, and intentionally build leadership at all levels that reflect the racial, cultural, and linguistic delivery of our state. And we use both proactive and strategic and targeted universal approaches. Focus upstream on root causes and the power differentials that exist, and try to create sustainable high impact solutions on those populations and places with the greatest need. Racially neutral or colorblind policies have really failed to address the needs of marginalized communities and have only exacerbated racial gaps. That we are collaborative and inclusive. We achieve better outcomes by engaging with each other and our partners in families in the context of communities and stakeholders very early in the process. And we do this continuously and meaningfully throughout that time. And we form and sustain authentic partnerships. We bring humility and respect to our work, and we meaningfully respond to our stakeholder voices. And that we will, work to be transparent and accountable. We build trust and a common understanding of being transparent and accountable in our actions and processes. That's a mouthful. Next slide.
And this is the OSPI equity statement. We are looking specifically at the, I'm going to move this so I can see it, looking at each child, student, community possessing strengths and cultural knowledge that benefits our peers, educators, and schools. This goes down to really identifying that there's multiple partners that are a part of this process and that we want to be able to support and offer access to, regardless of ability, disability, color, race, ethnicity, sexual preference. There's a long gamut of persons that are in need of support and lifting and allyship, and we have a responsibility to move forward in this space. And as Alicia had said, OSPI is committed to dismantling systemic racism. We are committed to making systems better. We're committed to creating a P12 system in our educational processes. This needs to be acknowledged that early childhood education is where our foundations start. We acknowledge that as persons that are here today, and we need to maintain that across the grade levels. How do we have vertical and horizontal collaboration opportunities, and how are we ensuring that our students, as they come into our educational systems, are supported and not marginalized and separated and segregated as soon as they start into our systems, whether it be childcare or educational program. So we are here for that. We are here for those persons. We are allies in that space, and we continue to do the good work. So I'm passionate about that and ready to move forward. So next slide, please.
So we just wanted to share with you now just what the early learning landscape looks like in Washington State. Multiple opportunities. We do come from a state where we have a mixed delivery system, which means that programs can be offered in school districts, family home childcare. There's just a number of different opportunities for children in Washington. And so you can see here, we're unlicensed providers might be those providers that are under 4 hours a day, like a co-op preschool. We've got family, friends, and neighbor care that is also unlicensed. And then we have licensed childcare and family homes that partner with DCYF, to follow those licensing guidelines. And they do have access to the Washington State, the Washington Connection childcare, so they can draw down subsidy dollars to support families' enrollment in those different types of programs. And then, we have the Head Start ECAP programs. Head Start is run through Region 10 Head Start office. And luckily within DCYF, we do have the Head Start Collaboration Office. And then we have ECAP, which Nicole and Allison will both share some more about. And of course, the great programs, that our great Ryan is in charge of, the Part B preschool and IDEA. And then we have Transitional Kindergarten. So between, all of these families, what we do know is that 57% of households in Washington, that there's children under 5. And so there's 2 parents working. So we really need to look at that, the realities of the need for childcare and programs and just accessibility for the families that are in our communities. And that about 38,000 students in our state draw down subsidy dollars out of the 112 that are attending at a licensed program. Many of these programs that you see here are participating in Early Achievers, our state's quality rating and improvement system. And then we have, again, those specific Head Start and ECAP locations, throughout the state. And then, you know, with the addition of OSPI programs, you know, there's opportunities out there, but there needs to be more. And again, this is just a high level overview, just to give you an idea of what's out there. I'm sure that we've missed, you know, some of those providers in this list, but this just gives you an idea of what our current landscape looks like in Washington State. Next slide.
All right, so that's a really nice way to kind of put, like, I would say I'm thinking about the houses, right? And here's a neighborhood, and those are different, you know, different homes, different agencies that are living within those houses in our neighborhoods. And depending on where we are across the state, we're going to have more or less of those opportunities. I reflect on my my previous experience in district, and we had a childcare desert. There were very few, if any, childcares that were center-based, and most were licensed or unlicensed home, and more so friend, family, neighbor. We're challenged by that, and even more so when we start to talk about how are we supporting our students with disabilities. So again, my time with you right now is to focus on our students with disabilities that are engaging in our early childhood programs. I'd like to give you some information as it goes to state. And then also, what are we doing to increase? So I want to, you know, we identify problem of practice, and then we have to move past it. If we sit in that space of wondering why and what is wrong, and we can't move forward, our kids stay there too, our families stay there too. So it is really focusing on problem and then solution and action. So again, I'm just so excited to share with you everything that we have been doing. The last 2 years have been phenomenal in the space of early childhood special education, as it is attended, or the connection to program change and recruitment and of amazing partnerships. And again, the alliance that we've created and in some of these projects, but also nurtured of previous relationships that have happened between our DCYF partnerships with OSPI. There's a lot of good happening, and we hope that we can share this with you and also encourage you to become active in these opportunities if you aren't currently. Next slide, please. You can click until something shows up. There we go. This is an action slide. So the state of inclusion in Washington State. It's important to think about this, and these are some quick data points that you can pull in conversation and things that we want to think about. The top is probably one of the most important things that I can ever bring to a conversation, in that we have to recognize that as our children are identified and found eligible for special services, only 4% of that population from age 3 to 21 are in that space of intellectual disability. That's a significant number, because what we find that we do is that we put these children into silos, and we say, oh, you have an IEP, therefore you are in a special program, you are self-contained, you are not going to engage in special interactions with your peers or receive the same general education content or training that these other peers are getting. It's not fair, it's not right, and we're seeing in the numbers and the performance gaps over time that it's nothing, there's no good words that are going to come out of my mouth right there. It's a travesty. It is truly a disservice to our children. It's a disservice to our systems. These are things that we recognize, and we have, again, that call to action. What can we do to better serve our students starting at age 3? And truly, if we think of a 0 to 5 system where we have children in early intervention, this has to start at birth. We have to identify and support and identify needs of families and children as soon as they come into our systems, and support them regardless of ability or disability, et cetera, et cetera. So upwards of 90% of our student populations are above average or average intellect. Yet we find when we start to look at the federal data that our students are still being placed in self-contained settings. They're being segregated from their peers. They're receiving academic supports that are not at the level of their peers because they have to have modified instruction because they're behind. And we really want to pull back and say, and then why are they behind? Are they behind because they're being pulled out of core content and they're not having access to the whole story? What's going on? I want to just jump down to when it comes to early childhood, we have the WAC Kids assessment. That is our kindergarten entry fall assessment, where we look at how kids are coming to school ready. If we think again about what's happening for our students within that 0 to 5 space, we have to, again, there's an opportunity here. There's things that you can do. There's things that you are doing. This is not to say that those of you on this call today are not doing good work. I have no doubt that you are. I have no doubt that you're passionate. I have no doubt that you are changing the game the best that you can. I say this because we have to recognize institutionally in our systems that there's changes that need to happen within our districts, within messaging to leadership, within the policies and procedures that we at OSPI and DCYF are currently supporting. And we are like, wait a minute, this has to change to do this better. And that's why we're here today. OSPI, DCYF are committed to being here to say, we know that what we can do better, and we want to do that for you today. If I talk about WAC Kids performance for students with disabilities, we know that there's over a 30% achievement gap between our students with disabilities and without, and that's over a number of years. And we find that gap, that performance gap is staying. Students at 3rd grade are maintaining that 30% achievement gap. By the time they get to 10th grade, they're maintaining that and then expanding upon that. We also find that our students with disabilities in relationship to their placement has something to do with that, we can assume. Next slide, please. We've clicked enough. Perfect. So this is the national data, currently pulled from 2017-18, but if you look at the 18-19 or 19-20 data, it's going to be the same. Washington is in a little bit of a stale. We're stuck. We're at a plateau. We are doing a lot, and we are making moves in K-12, and that's why when I said within our equity statement, we really want to see OSPI grab onto, and DCYF grab onto that concept of P12 and then 0, P being prenatal as opposed to P being pre-K. We have opportunities here to change our systems to better support all of our students, all of our families, and the practitioners and providers that are working within these systems. What this is telling you, indicator 6A is a federal indicator that is required by the federal government for school districts to report to the state. So it comes from the districts, goes to the state, and then it goes to the feds. The question is, where are our students being placed? If they have an IEP, where are they receiving the majority of their services? And so 6A is our desirable space. That's that regular early childhood program. That's that wheel that Alicia showed you at the beginning. That is, it could be childcare, it could be a private school, it could be ECAP, Head Start, it could be a developmental program. And maybe it's an early childhood center, etc. But there's a difference. A developmental preschool program is a self-contained program if it has children that have IEPs, let's say percentage-wise, more than 50%. If you have 50% of the students with disabilities and 50% without non-disabled peers, that's a regular early childhood program. An ECAP and a Head Start are a regular early childhood program, and there's conversations about that. Well, they're at risk. It's still a regular early childhood program until we look at the ratios. So nationally, we have 45% of our neighbors that are able to maintain access to regular early childhood programs, where in Washington, we're finding only 26% of our school districts across the state are offering regular early childhood access to students with IEPs. That means they're receiving services in a classroom. Speech therapy, OT, PT, cognitive services are happening in the classroom. They're not being pulled out, or if they are, it's just very minor. So that's what we hope to see and to continue to build in Washington. Next slide, please. Excellent. So this is an exciting resource that we just developed. Thank you, Julie, for sharing that. You can't fix what you don't know is a problem, right? So we have been working behind the scenes to create and to communicate with our partners that we have K-12 data. We have LRE, that's my backward stack, LRE is least restrictive environment. Least restrictive environment is a word that we're going to use in our IEPs when we talk about what is the place where a child with an IEP can go that is least restrictive, most accessible to peers. We're always talking about how do we get our students with disabilities back into that general education classroom with their peers, receiving the same experience educationally and socially that they would receive if they didn't have an IEP, or how can we access this with modifications and accommodations? That's where those come in. The most restrictive environment would be a self-contained setting away from peers with a modified curriculum experience and with those accommodations and modifications. So that's what we're just to add some context to this if you don't have as much experience with students with disabilities or that process. Where this gets exciting and interesting is that we've been talking about this. We know there's a problem, but we also recognize that we have to align this with K-12. And so over the last year, we've been able to work collaboratively with our partners on the other side of the fence to say, we need to talk about this. We need to acknowledge that where we're making movement on the K-12 side, we're not making as much movement in early learning. And what can we do to support that, change that, and again, who do we need to talk to? Which talking to you is a part of this. We have to talk to our persons in the field. We need to talk to you guys so that you can continue to spread this word. We have to make some changes. The document that's in front of you we just released it last night. It's fresh, it's hot off the press, as anything you want to say. It is a LRE by district across the state. So any of you right now could jump onto this website. It's on the OSPI website under our inclusionary practices project work as well. And then I know Julie just jumped through it in the chat box for y'all, but it gives you a lens as to over the last 3 years, how have you been doing? At the very top, that's little says statewide trends. That's going to give you a comparative to what we're doing. And it's not to say, like I said, we want it to be closer to 45 for 6A. 6B is separate school or program. There's a key off to the far right of the document. So you'd be like, I don't know what this is. So all the information is there for you, but we just want to give you that information, heads up, and we'd love for you to dig into this later. And then we're available for anything that you have question-wise. We'll be there to support you as you start to dig into this. I'm going to say, let's move on. We are in the process of our WAC revisions. So we have Washington administrative codes. We have WAC revisions that we have to, that we use that are provisions for rules of special education that we abide by. That's what we do when we're working in special education. Well, how do you make decisions? We use the special education rules of provision. We do this by law, by the federal law, by the state law, and then we also open it up for comment. So if something's not working well or doesn't feel right, we open it up to public comment and we have those conversations about how might we revise or take this into consideration. So I just wanted to put up and share with you that we had public comment and we have made some revisions to the rules over the last, I would say from December and January, and this has been ongoing for probably the last 5 to 6 months. But we've just closed our second public comment in January. We've collected the comments. We're going to respond to them for feelings and concerns that our public members might have. And then we're going to post our revisions, and then there'll be updated regs in probably June that would be ready for use and implementation for the next school year. So heads up on that if you are working in special education, that is happening right now. If you have any wonderings about that, go to the OSPI website. We can share that with you, and then you can see where the revisions have been suggested. And then so you know, I say this and why it's important is because what we've done this round is really spotlight early childhood special education. What does it look like? FAPE, free appropriate public education, is required for all children that qualify for IDEA Part B from 3 to 21. It doesn't start in kindergarten. Kiddos that are 3 are required to have access to a regular early childhood program, general education services, and accommodations modifications. This doesn't start at 5, it starts at 3. This is not new information. This is not new, but it is something that not all of our programs are ready for. So how do we support that? And those are conversations that we are here for you. If you have any wonderings, want to unpack this, we would love to be able to support you in that conversation to visualize how you could create more programs, collaborate with your community partners like our ECAP friends to ensure that we have access and accessibility for students with disabilities. Next slide. Awesome. And then I'm going to pull Julie in, and she's going to give you just a quick update on like, hey, here's a lot of amazing things that we've been doing, and here's some ways that you can get involved.
Thank you, Ryan. Just to briefly go through this slide, I did just drop in the chat a link to our Early Childhood Special Education Initiatives webpage on OSPI. There you can explore and kind of really dig in each of our initiatives by indicators. I just want to kind of quickly go through, as Ryan had mentioned, we are committed to creating a P12 system with that vertical and horizontal alignment. And so many of the things that we're doing is really identifying ways that we can really focus in on inclusionary practices with a collaborative focus. So I want to highlight some of the areas that we've been working with our partners at DCYF on. Currently, we're in the process of developing and revising a joint statement that's related to our PreK inclusion collaboration team that Allison will talk about later today. Additionally, we're working on developing a Part C to Part B transition guide with our partners in ECIT. I would love to talk briefly about our PreK Inclusion Champions Network. This program works to prioritize inclusionary practices. We have 9 ESD partners right now with 52 school districts. So we are very excited to continue to push forward with inclusionary practices across the state. Additionally, we are lifting and moving into our phase 3 of our Washington Pyramid Model statewide implementation. Again, with the partnerships that we've created, DCYF is engaging in that partnership and understands as well the importance of lifting pyramid model and moving towards better inclusionary practices across the state. We want to draw your attention to some of these wonderful initiatives. I'd love to talk more and more about our PDG, Pre-K Development Grant Program, which I know last session you had a good opportunity to spend some time with Gretchen. So next slide, if we can move to Carrie. Thank you. And this is another program that we wanted to highlight. And again, this is the Transitional Kindergarten program, which, as Alicia had mentioned in her initial kind of infographic, is another pathway or another option. We did go ahead and link Karma Hugo's information here. She's the Director of Early Learning. If you have any questions about Transitional Kindergarten, we recommend that you contact her for that. Thank you so much. Next slide.
I'm double muted. Okay.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm just that double mute. It gets me sometimes. Just going to sit for a minute on these lovely pictures because I just love kid pictures. So hi again. I'm Nicole. Going to be talking with you about ECAP, the Early Childhood Education and Assistance Program. And for a lot of you on the call, you probably already know some of this information. So I'm going to touch briefly just on some of our statistics and some of our information. And then what I'm going to do is pass it off to Allison for the last couple of slides to talk about some of the collaboration that we've been doing with school districts, with OSPI, and with our other partners and state agencies around inclusion and other partnerships as well. Okay. So go ahead and go to the next slide. And hang on a second because my daughter's coming down here for one moment. Just a Okay, I knew that was going to happen. How did I know that was going to happen? Murphy's Law, you know, once you start talking, the kiddo knows and they come. Everyone got to say hi to Helen there. Okay, so comprehensive services, ECAP, you know, we're pretty focused on, we're going to stay pretty focused on education during our time today, but just to, briefly go over that, the comprehensive model that ECAP has really is, is education, family support, and health. And we really see those as, let's use a metaphor of, 3 legs of a stool that are holding up our program. We need family support to be able to make ECAP happen, and we need health services to also, support families and children that attend and enroll into ECAP. So just a little bit of information about that, and I'll go ahead and go to the next slide and share with you some information about our site locations around the state. So you can see that a majority of our partners, 56% of sites and 58% of our slots are located in public schools. And so that's a huge partner for us, obviously, from the local level all the way up to the state level, of course. And then one of the important things I think to remember about ECAP, and when we have conversations about inclusion, is that there is that other part of the pie here, where ECAP is happening in childcare centers and Head Start facilities and tribal organizations and, other locations. That's what, that comprise our mixed delivery system. And so when we think about inclusion, definitely think about public schools, but then we also need to think about how we can increase inclusive settings across our mixed delivery system. So really, really good little tidbit of information there. And I'll go ahead and go to the next slide. I'm just kind of sailing through here. Some of the characteristics of ECAP children. First, we like to share the race and ethnicity characteristics. And what's interesting to point out here, as you can probably see and digest pretty easily, is that the greenish yellow is all young children in Washington state and their race ethnicity representation, and then the red is all of ECAP. So as you can see, for the populations that we serve, the ECAP is overrepresented in children and families of color. And so we're really serving a lot of children and families of color across the state. So that's just some interesting characteristics to note. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. And this is about risk factors. So when we talk about serving the ECAP population too, it's really important to talk about, what are the risk factors that we see sometimes with families that, help families become eligible, but are also things and situations that are going on in their lives that are pretty intense sometimes. And so you can see some of those are, CPS involvement, substance abuse issues, foster and kinship care kiddos. The kiddos and families that have these risk factors are extremely prioritized for our program. And so you can also see, relevant to this conversation, there is a percentage here that says on an IEP anytime during the school year. Now, this data is from 2018-19, and I can say from just pulling the data yesterday from our early learning management system, that percentage in the 2021 school year is up to 12.7%. And so I feel like we're also increasing every year. Homeless families, that's a good, thank you for that. This is just a snapshot, but yes, we do. Homeless families are highly prioritized for ECAP. And I believe they get, some of the most points in our priority point system for enrollment in ECAP. So it could be, I could look up that percentage for you, Melinda, right after I'm done talking, and I can share that with you too. It's just not represented on this chart. So thank you for that. All right, we can go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'm going to just talk really quickly about some of the results or outcomes that ECAP has. And this information is not from our own analysis, but this is from our analysis that was conducted by the Washington State Institute for Public Policy that focused on the benefits of ECAP. And these pieces were actually updated, I think in 2018 or 19, with, okay, how are ECAP kiddos doing now, later, So these are just some quick statistics about, 23 ECAP children, children who participated in ECAP were more likely to and then you can read the stats. Sorry, I won't read them all, but you can take a screenshot, or we can share this information with you, you know, at the end of the presentation after we're done. Just wanted to share those couple of things with you. The next piece is our own analysis, which is, and in partnership with Teaching Strategies Gold. So you can go ahead and go to the next piece. And this is our, this is a good measure that we use for child outcomes in education, which is Teaching Strategies Gold Child Growth. So this data is also from 2018-19, because as you can imagine, 2019-20 is a little bit off with the pandemic, as everybody's I'm sure is. So this is the information that we have to share with you today, from fall to spring, and it's pretty self-explanatory there. Fall assessments are in red, and spring assessments are in that greenish yellow color. So overall, seeing an increase in all 6 domains for ECAP children throughout the year. And then the next piece that I'll just run real quickly by, go ahead to the next slide, is kindergarten readiness. So percent of children ready for kindergarten at the end of ECAP. So this is, again, you know, not WAC Kids information, but our own information that we collect at the end of the year through TSG. And you can see the differences here for all 4-year-olds, 4-year-olds with 1 year of ECAP, or 4-year-olds with 2 years of ECAP, and how much more of a difference that makes when they have 2 years of programming. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide also, and this one is a little bit interesting. I'm going to share with you the link to this too, the early learning feedback report. I'm not sure if you all have seen this before, but it's some really interesting information. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. And we just wanted to share this is also from the 2018-19 school year, and you can see in the blue is children on IEPs or in special education who participate in ECAP. And then the orange is the higher income cohort, and the gray is lower income cohort. Now, I know one of you is probably going to ask me, what does low income and what does higher income mean? And I can't quote that off the top of my head, but I'm sure that the early learning feedback report has that information listed somewhere. Probably it's in its introduction. So feel free to explore that website. I just wanted to kind of show a snapshot of like, hey, how are ECAP kiddos with with also special education, doing in ECAP and doing in all of these domains. So this is just an interesting little snapshot for you, some data that we have as well. Allison, would you add anything to that? And if not, I can just pass it on to you for the next couple of slides.
Absolutely. No, I think you covered it. All right. So what does inclusion look like in partnerships? So to get a better understanding of what inclusion looks like, in spring of 2020, and in partnership with Cultivate Learning and OSPI, DCYF ECAP launched a survey for ECAP contractors. The survey was intended to collect data specific to what inclusive practices and services look like within programs. The sample was pulled from 69% of ECAP contractors, and this graph shows that there are partnerships developing within programs. 47% of the participants responded with that services for children with an IEP are provided and embedded within ECAP classrooms. That is very exciting news. I cannot tell you how excited I was when I saw that. There are still 28% that responded saying that there is still a pull-out model that is being implemented, while 17% of those services are provided through an itinerant model. Some of the contractors commented on some of the partnerships they've developed with their school districts and gave examples of the teamwork that they have. So one contractor said that their ECAP teachers participate in IEP meetings and monthly professional development to support services. Another contractor explained that we partner with our SPED department to have para-educators in our inclusive classrooms. The SPED teacher and early learning teacher partner together to plan curriculum and support each other's work. To add to this data, in the next few months, we'll be analyzing more as it comes in. We recently sent out a site survey which focuses on how inclusive practices are implemented and what individualization looks like. And in mid-March, we hope to send out the third and final survey, which is a school district survey in ECAP. And hopefully we get to learn more about partnerships within inclusive settings. So I thought we'd share some really awesome data with you to start. Let's hop on to the next slide. All right. So next I want to share some highlights from our inclusion work supported through our Partnership for Preschool Improvement, or PPI, which is grant funded work. One of the biggest successes of the PPI work has made, and which has really moved a lot of our inclusion work forward, is the teams that we've created. Our largest team is our PreK team, which is the Preschool Inclusion Collaboration Team. This consists of OSPI and DCYF ECAP, lead teachers, special education teachers, TOSAs, and directors. We have contractors, Head Start grantees, advocates, parent, birth to 3, kindering. It's really just an amazing stakeholder group. We also have sub work groups that support different subject areas. So far, we've had the inclusion model work group and professional development work group have launched. We should have 2 more work groups by the middle of March also launching. I know Julie touched a little bit on the pyramid model, but we've teamed together in state leadership teams, community of practice, and we're moving towards phase 3, which is also very exciting. Something that we always ensure is in the front of our work is racial equity, and we have adjusted the standards to ensure equitable access for children and families. We are also working towards inclusion pilot meetings to begin in the spring, where we will look at how programs have adapted their work to meet individual needs of students to ensure inclusive, equitable access for programs and services. And then we also have a lot of our PDG work with kindergarten transitions and our 100 schools initiatives. So yeah, really great stuff. And I think I might be passing it on to Alicia after this. Is that correct? Awesome.
I think so. So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes talking about, you've heard us toss it around a couple times, integrated pre-K or also IPK. So Ryan had mentioned earlier that in January of last year, Governor Inslee sent a directive to Secretary Hunter, who oversees DCYF. And he is directing us to work with OSPI to identify different administrative efficiencies and other strategies so that we can align and improve the integration of high quality early learning classrooms that are administered by both agencies. He basically has come forth and said, you as OSPI and DCYF have received state funding and or federal funding to serve children in early learning in Washington State. So what can we do and how can we bring these, more programs together and have some true collaboration and create integration, better integration and collaboration throughout the state so that we can serve more of our early learners in the state in a more inclusive, high quality program. So I'm just going to share a little bit about the work that we've done so far. So next slide, please. So in all of our work, we've been looking at, and very excited that we get to build on a strong foundation. We have the Early Achievers QRIS system in Washington State. We have existing ECAP and Head Start. And so just a few, tidbits of information about what we know about children in Washington is that we have just over 14,000 served in ECAP, just over 8,000 served in Head Start, and over 18,000 children receiving services through IDEA Part B. But 49.7% of our students with disabilities are not in a regular early learning program, which Ryan had shared information and statistics about that. And we had already mentioned that we offer preschool in a mixed delivery system. And one of the biggest things is that 139,000 children are not enrolled in any type of early learning program. Multiple streams of funding exist in our state. We have ECAP, which is state-funded pre-K. We have IDEA funds, for Part B services. And we have Transitional Kindergarten, which draws down the basic ed dollars for 4-year-olds. We have Head Start, we have Working Connections, and then we have various other grants, donations, private pay, lots of other types. We have a lot of really great partners, including working with our tribal nations. We have ESDs as part of our planning group, school districts, CCA, DSHS, and multiple advocacy groups as well, like WASA, the Rural Alliance, and ARC of King County. And so what we're doing is we have an advocacy committee that it gets together about every other month right now. We have about 16 school districts, 4 ESDs, 5 advocacy groups, various partners, throughout the state. And we get together and we are really looking at, when it comes to communities, acknowledging that we have to do a better job to support our families and our children in those communities and in those neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So we have what we call our IPK opportunity. We have a problem, but we also have a huge opportunity. And we have this opportunity to really build on what exists and lift those barriers so that we can have more collaboration, so we can be serving more students. So our left-hand column is our problems. You saw them, some of them on the previous page. There's, kids, according to WAC Kids, are coming in, not ready. Not 100% of students are ready. There are disproportionate outcomes for tribal children and children of color represented in that WAC Kids data. And there is, there's undefined quality in transitional kindergarten, and, the infamous funding and regulatory barriers that we know exist. And those barriers exist because each of those regulations have rules and requirements in order for you to get the funding. So we're really looking at that too. And then if there's lack of coordination among school districts and community partners. And so again, we have an opportunity, but it's a complex opportunity. We want to look at how we can streamline funding and regulation to make integrated, inclusive, high quality programs more feasible. We want to have more inclusive settings. Ryan and Allison, everybody has shared about, those requirements for LRE, and how can we create these programs and come together for the children in our community so we can serve children where they need it, when they need it, not on our timeline. It, needs to be available when the children and families need it. And so we're really looking at increasing, enrollment in pre-K into those high quality settings, and really getting students into programs that are furthest from opportunity, which we know will increase that kindergarten readiness, and also working on increasing family engagement in the transition to K process, another important piece of the work. And so we're really looking at, with our advisory committee, how we braid funds, partner with each other to remove barriers, and increase inclusionary practices so that we're really truly serving all students in programs throughout Washington State. We're really taking the developmentally appropriate practice and quality focus in our work. Just because there's a classroom doesn't mean that it's a great classroom to be in. So, how do we embed developmentally appropriate practice and high quality into these programs? And really leveraging, what is working and building on that so that we're really serving students with a community lens from the community and in the communities that they're coming to us from, and that we become more supportive in that work together. So like I said, it is a complex problem. Please go to the next slide. And so we have some pretty, lofty goals to collaborate, to build on existing systems and preschool programs that already exist in Washington, improve access to inclusive environments for children with disabilities and other complex needs, remove those barriers to participation, expand access to high quality preschool prior to kindergarten entry, and determine pathways to integrate programs with transitional K that might already exist. Next slide. All right.
This is mine. Yeah, this is just our call to action. Developing inclusionary habits. We're committed to building systems that meet the needs, question mark. Is that what we want to do? Or are we here to add to an existing inequitable system? And again, I would say within the pandemic, within the recent movements towards social justice, we have an opportunity, as Alicia said. We have to recognize what's working, what's not working. We have to, I just wrote it on a slide earlier, reuse, renew, recycle. Like, what do we want to hold on to? What do we want to let go? What do we need to repurpose so that we can make the best system possible? And this is, I hope, exciting for you to hear, as it is exciting for us to be a part of the process to make change and to be a part of that change. How can we move forward collectively with the least dangerous assumptions? I want to just, if you haven't noticed in the chat box, Julie did put her contact information as well as Allison's. The Preschool Inclusion Collaboration Team is the statewide advocacy group that supports inclusionary practices for young children. If you are interested, please let us know. This is, as basically that's the registration information. Just reach out, let us know, give us your contact information, and then we have convenings 2 to 3 times a year. We're doing some mini convenings throughout that process. And then again, the small groups that Allison shared, we are digging into this and we are creating models and recommendations that will be used in the work that Alicia spoke to. We are making moves and we want you to be partners in this work with us. And so I think, Carrie, let's move to the next slide. We know that the rest of the day, so we're going to stop. If you have questions, please let us know. We're happy to entertain them now. But we want to offer your time for teaming and to sit in the space of new information, old information, and again, new opportunity, I hope, for you. So we've offered some questions that might be helpful in unpacking this conversation. Also, again, offering the link, and we can add that back into the chat for the LRE trends by district, if that's something you're interested in looking at your special education data or pulling that and sharing it with your teammates later. But we want to inspire you to have some just amazing conversations with the rest of your time today. And that is where we'll stop, Carrie. I think next slide is just questions and then contact information if you would love to reach out to us later.
Thank you all so much. I'll go ahead and leave your contact information up there for a moment. I would encourage you all to take a deep breath. These ladies have presented you with some amazing data and opportunities and challenges. We know that we need to do more, or maybe I should say different, in our early learning spaces. And I agree, COVID is a great time for us to embark on this journey of rethinking what it is that we're doing, to really challenge and push back and ask those hard questions and think outside of the box, and to have those brave conversations and really imagine possibilities.